So the reference table, geologic timescale, there's tons of information on here. When other teachers look at this and they ask, what is going on with that chart, they're always overwhelmed by how much information is crammed into this, evidenced by how small they write on this thing. There's just so much. This document could be 4 times as big and still be kind of small for what it's trying to show. So we're going to break this up into different parts. Just know that it's a lot of reading and looking and finding words, and all of the words, almost all of them are, weird science words. And so if you see a word, you can't be confused by it sounding, complicated. You just have to understand, oh, I'm looking for these really scientific words in here. So you don't have to recognize them as soon as you see them. You just got to know where to look, okay? So this is broken up into some different chunks. We are going to focus on from here to here today, for this first video. So there's different chunks of time called eons. Eon is the largest chunk of time. There's 2 types of eons, the Phanerozoic or the Precambrian. That's basically what it is. There's other words like Proterozoic and Archean that sometimes will get mixed in with that, but you need to understand that if you're asked for an eon, that's where you're looking. Okay. Second is era. So ERA is your era. Just trying to find a different. Should have had a different color pencil here ready to go. My red disappeared on me. So your era is right here. There's basically 3 eras that we'll talk about. You have the Cenozoic era, the Mesozoic era, and the Paleozoic. What does that mean? Well, it means that the Paleozoic goes from right here all the way to right there. So anything that happens in this part of the chart is Paleozoic. Okay? So all of these things that we're going to talk about, they just fall under this time period. Why is there these 3 main time periods? As we start to look at the chart a little bit, it's all about what kind of fossils do we find. So if you look down here, this is called the Cambrian explosion. All sorts of animals really started to evolve and spread throughout the globe. The oceans of the globe. There's no life on land at this point. Now, everything from here to here is this Paleozoic time period. But it ends with the mass extinction. So there's a few mass extinctions throughout Earth's history where, 85, 90, 95% of the species on Earth died off for some different reasons. Meteorites that hit the Earth, large-scale volcanic eruptions, different things can cause these mass extinctions. But each of these chunks of time, like the Paleozoic, are based off of the fossils that you see. Okay, the Mesozoic is the middle period. It's a little bit shorter, so you can see that the spacing for that is based off of, it's like a timeline. Okay, the Mesozoic time period is a little bit shorter. The Mesozoic goes from 251 to 65.5 million years ago. This is the age of the dinosaurs, really, the age of the reptile. So the Mesozoic has these different time periods. Periods are just smaller chunks of time to break up an era. So the Triassic is a time period that goes from 251 million years ago to 200 million years ago. Then the most well-known one is the Jurassic period. So anything that's a period is in this column here. The Jurassic and then the Cretaceous, those are all part of the Mesozoic. Okay? And you can get their ages from here. So this is how you figure out how many millions of years ago something happened. And these numbers are going to keep popping up as we look in different columns. But what you need to know for just this video is just how are those chunks of time broken up. Okay? So this period right here, the Paleogene, goes from 65.5 million years ago, and it ends 23 million years ago. These were all based off of fossil changes. There was a large mass extinction, pretty well known. Dinosaurs, meteorite hit off the coast of Mexico, sent up tons of ash, killed off most life on Earth. Okay, and so that starts the new era, which ends up being the era of the mammals really start to dominate Earth. Okay, so if you're asked about an epoch or an epoch, those are just these little, usually it's early, middle, and late. Early is the beginning of the Triassic, late is the end of the Triassic, but then you'll start to get into these ones once in a while. Those will show up, but you just need to be familiar that these words are here and how to use them, okay? So we'll get into the different columns. There's a different video for each column. How do you use those? But if you're just trying to find out what eon, era, period these go with, you're just lining up with these different words. It gets a little fuzzy when you look before the Cambrian. So the most confusing thing about this chart, out for me. The most confusing thing about this chart, most of the good stuff with fossils happens right here in the Phanerozoic, and it's expanded to take up most of this chart. So if you look down here, the Cambrian time period, really, this is the Cambrian time period right here on the chart, and then all of this stuff happens before the Cambrian. There's just not much that was going on Earth as far as life for the first over 500 million years, 542 million years. Not much was happening. So these details will be a separate video, but just what do you call each time period, and how do you figure out how many millions of years ago this was supposed to address? So hopefully that makes sense, and then we can start to build off of the different information on different parts of the chart.